Welcome to the GCN Tech Clinic, where we aim to answer your bike and tech related questions. As ever, you can submit your questions down below in the comments section using the hashtag AskGCNTech, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible. So without further ado, into this week's first question, which comes from Andrew Shakespeare, who says, "Hi GCN Tech, I recently bought a pre-enjoyed bike," like that, which came with aluminium rims. I'm going to be putting my carbon wheels on it, so I've replaced the brake pads. It turns out that the pads that were on the bike already were carbon specific pads, and better than the ones I'm putting on, but they have been used on aluminium rims. Now, John said on a previous GCN Tech video that you shouldn't keep pads when swapping between aluminium and carbon wheels. I won't be doing that, but what, if anything, can you do to clean up the carbon specific brake pads if they've been used on aluminium rims, if there's plenty of wear on them? Well, yes, you're right, you shouldn't swap immediately between bikes, but if those pads are in good condition and have plenty of wear on them, what you could do is undo the little grub screws, take the pads out, and the first thing to do is to just inspect them and look to see if there's any little flecks of metal in them. Those can damage your carbon rims, and maybe use like a little pick, like Park Tool make a little pick, and you can just pick out the big chunks. And then what you could do is simply get some sandpaper and just rub the pads down so that you're getting rid of that top glassed off layer that could also have any tiny microparticles of metal in, and then they should be good. If there's plenty of wear and they're nowhere near the wear indicator, should be good to go. Pop them back in, use them on carbon rims, because the important thing is the compound that the brake pads are made of when using those pads with a carbon rim. Next question is from Ronnie, who says, "I'm going to ride up the Alpe d'Huez or Mont Ventoux this summer. I've only got deep 65mm carbon wheels with rim brakes, and I'm worried about the wind and the heat build-up from the braking during the descent. Should I find replacement wheels, or will it be fine if I'm a bit cautious?" Well, Ronnie, I would say you should be fine. The big thing really is it depends on your weight. Now, bigger riders are going to generate, more force on the rim and generate more heat when under prolonged braking than a lighter rider. So that will generate more heat. So I don't know how much you weigh, but that's a question you can sort of answer for yourself. The one thing to do is just when you're descending is to just be aware of what's happening. I would say if your brakes start to really get hot, they usually start to make a lot of noise and you start to feel a bit of fade. And if they start really squealing, then you can always just stop at the side of the road, admire the view and take a photo and enjoy it for a second, take it in, let them cool down. It only takes a few seconds for them to cool down, and then get back on your way. I do know people that have delaminated carbon clinchers when descending big mountains. And the other thing is that riders who are heavier, but also riders that are less confident because they haven't spent a lot of time descending big mountains before, they tend to drag the brakes more, and that can generate, again, more heat. But if you take your time and you're a bit cautious and you're aware that you could delaminate them, then you should be absolutely fine. Next question is from Martin Brinkmuller, who says, "Hi GCN Tech team, what would happen if I ride a bike with more weight than is officially declared good to go?" So I guess over the weight limit. He says he's taller than Connor and is 100 kilograms, but many bikes often have weight limits of 110 or 120 kilograms. But once he's added weight to the bike in the form of bike packing bags and equipment, he's worried that his system weight is going to be approaching that. So he's asking, would you assume that a gravel bike can take more weight than what it's declared for if you ride it on the road, because it's designed for riding off-road? I think yes, but I would say that cautiously. I would say check if you can with the manufacturer, but I think it's a safe bet on the basis that the gravel bikes are intended to be for rougher terrain, and in my experience of riding various different gravel bikes, they are generally a bit heavier and a bit more beefed up than the road bike equivalent. So that would be a good thing to go for. The biggest area I would think is wheels. And if you are worried about your weight, there are companies that do wheels that are for heavier riders, and you should also consider potentially getting some wheels personally made for you. This costs a lot less money than you might think. It'll probably cost less than a pair of fancy pants, really expensive carbon wheels, but you could get a set of custom wheels made with hubs that you want and really strong rims and a higher spoke count. That will make a really big difference. So I'd potentially look at that route. Next question is from Harley Day, which says, hey people, love the show. May I ask a hydraulic brake question? Of course you can. My bike has post-mount brake calipers. It's a 2016 Cannondale CAD X, and he says they're awful. But he says he's looking to upgrade the group set to GRX, but GRX calipers are flat mount, not post mount. So what can you do? Well, the answer is simple. You can get post mount to flat mount adapters. These go where the post mount caliper would go, and then turn it into basically a fitting so that you can fit a flat mount caliper on there. They don't cost much. There's various different options out there, and you can pick them up from a lot of online retailers for not much money. So there you go, get some adapters and you can fit your GRX group set on there. Should be good to go. Ryan Marsh next says, hi, I'm 1 year post-op from a dual organ transplant and started cycling to get in shape for some outside time. My question is, I'm having trouble standing and riding my bike on climbs, but when I say seated on the climbs, I feel like I'm going backwards. What are things I can work on to help with that? I'm using clipless shoes and pedals. Any help would be much appreciated. Well, Ryan, glad to hear that you are getting over having that massive operation. That's phenomenal. I'm glad that you're enjoying your cycling and that's helping. Riding seated is actually more efficient, certainly more aerodynamic, and you're not having to support all your own body weight when you're climbing. And so, you can watch the Tour de France on GCN Plus. You'll see that, the best climbers in the world on long climbs, they're remaining seated as much as they can. Yes, sometimes you want to be explosive and get out the saddle, but you can even be explosive seated in the saddle. What I would suggest is that you maybe put easier gears on if you're struggling to stay seated, as you may want to use a higher cadence and spin your legs more when you stay seated and climbing. And I would also say just work on your seated climbing. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it, and it is more efficient in the long run. And something that I've found that can really help with that is just doing a bit of core work, little and often, sort of 10 minutes every day or every other day if that's all you can manage, but just a nice intense core session to help you with that seated power and really engage your glutes and your adductors when you're pedaling seated. But let us know how you get on. AD, and this is the last question this week, it's all got time for, I'm afraid, has said, hi team, I've just thrown a fair amount to a new fancy pants frame set. Do you recommend frame protection for road bikes, or is that just for mountain bike guys and girls? Well, you get it on gravel bikes, certainly, but yeah, I would say why not? In a few key areas, some frame protection is really worth doing, especially if you want to protect a really expensive carbon bike, because they can suffer damage from impacts from not just little stones and things on the road, but also your chain getting dropped or chain slap. So around the chain area of your bike is a key area to focus on. A simple thing you can do is, as a really cheap thing, is simply wrap insulation tape or a bit of old inner tube around the chainstay and then secure that with some tape. Or if you want a smarter job and want to make it look smart, which you probably do because you've got a nice new bike, is you can actually get 3M protective film. You can usually find this for sale online. And it's just clear, sort of like PPF protection film that just goes on, similar to what they use in automotive on cars. And the classic places, under the down tube, on the chainstay. And I like to also put some protection around the inside of the chain rings, because when you drop a chain, that's a classic place where sometimes you can gouge a carbon frame in that spot. So protecting that bit, it's a good idea. Anyway, sorry if we've not got round to answering your question this time, but do keep them coming down in the comment section below and persist. If we've not answered it and you've asked it before, don't be afraid to ask the same question again under this tech show, for example, because then hopefully I'll see it and get round to it this time and be able to answer it in a future show. But until then, we'll see you next time. Bye!